Sara, Panden Save, Lama Rinpoche, Dage, Jewara, Pende, Denyon, Garden, Chamber, Gone, Jason, De, Gosong, Toge, Ngodo, Sado. Yang ta samba give lobichi sendi sending dundi chopper magin par meta chiwa junda tembata yanda lamla hini kurma tops ta ya lobichi da jela song yali ge shadam yimbata te indika salam yang taba samba gebe son the capsula ta yang taba sena jetange ngaran suke semtela tabe ke samba madab samba namba na soba yobare de yang ta samba geva sena ta samba ke nani jang ta chodobe ke samba yena kona Pemba Zovake Samba gave Samu Jula Nikona Yaya Samba Davo Tanto, that gave Sam Zambo Chikorana Yovanda, Teta Vianta, but Samba gave Love that Teta Samba gave us thinking the Chepadam Papa Rete, Yena Yanta, Jambo Lama Jambo Nala Song Yavadi. Geta yang tu jan song yo wadi yang ta ba gebe ge sem yo ba de cheba den pa ba de na yang ta de ta wo yo ba yin na yang ta de la yang ni yang do la sam non da ji tam yang ni yang do la tu ne gebe ge cha ba la shen do ne ja kwam chuk be ta phi nda bo ji la ma sam ba yin na then Ngamba Lang showed the Ranam Sen Tambi Yodi. Oh, Teta Buta, Kowa Toma Mepan, the Shendanage, and Yomona Combeki, Lang the short, they were Tella Rancho, and Role Havo in Dawachi Yovari. Johnson Teta Volatine, Takolman Nayan Del, Majimpa, Sen Della. Ta kora dan drovata ni chomata tan deyak tan yune bochi lan duyak samlan davo ke chawan na banna so bosaya te tavo ke dondi ke tropa tela magin pa meta chewa jondo tembata ta meta chewa sengente ta chula korbe ke chata yin sonyo bari te yende kapsala meta pa de rangin ke thena Tene Koran take Gyamtso la ten chick Koran Jetin Chuji la lo no watang. Jetin Chuji la lo ne. Ta chalong yanon shida mayon sambek and dushinda watchik gone. Tene Matan Chewa take yani yan the you Korean capsula. Don't take naming that chen don't take number in water nam talking number in one last about Tom Tang Tane. Then a two yondo kona ten here payota dembata. Young tap lamla hing ne ta hook to bake coma. The Taviat Hidak Terchen Barway Dorje.
The next song, which for those who are following in the book is on page 97, was written for a disciple, Tenpa Dorje, by Terchen Barway Dorje. It begins with the words, "You, my disciple, with genuine good intentions." Genuine good intentions refer to benevolent intentions, to the intentions that are concerned with the well-being, concerned for the well-being of others. We all have a variety of intentions arising in our minds at various times. Sometimes we are benevolent and caring. At other times we are malevolent and selfish. So he praises his disciple by saying that he has genuine, good or benevolent intentions. But then in the second line, he points out, Terchen Barway Dorje points out a danger that we all face, which is that of distraction. He says, "You, my disciple with genuine good intentions, don't crave the busy distractions of this life." This refers to what Jomgalo Dutai was referring to in his Crying to the Gurus from Afar, when he wrote, "I repeatedly begin and stop good deeds or virtuous actions." We give rise to good intentions and we begin doing something good, something appropriate, something healthy. But then our craving for the busy distractions of this life reasserts itself or intervenes, and we find ourselves stopping. Essentially, this is the recurrence of strong habit. Colloquially, Rinpoche said we refer to this as a scroll rolling itself back up. If a scroll has been rolled up for a very long time, it will tend to roll back up. The only way to keep it from doing that is actually to roll it up in the opposite direction, which will counteract the long habit. In the same way, we have to work strongly to counteract our habit of craving and involvement in distractions. Well, what are the busy distractions of this life? They consist of the things that we think of as success, competition with adversaries, and the protection of friends. In short, what all of this comes down to is the assumption of longevity. The source of the condition within our minds that allows us or permits us to become so easily swept from our course by the resurgence of habits and craving is that we operate under an assumption that there is time to waste, that we're going to live for a long time. So therefore, in the third line, Terchen Barway Dorje prescribes a precise remedy to this. Continuously recollect impermanence and death. If we recollect the fact that we have no idea how long we're going to live, we could die at any moment, we will remember that there is no time to waste. And that recollection will help us resist our craving for the busy distractions of this life. So therefore, he writes in the fourth line, spur yourself from your heart on the authentic path. To spur ourselves means to give rise to the mindfulness and vigilance that come from the recollection of death.
Lama chalap hina mahona, you la chuji on den jonkabe, teacher tabla soa top somaris. La lama chalap, te sosuke hing senayaro, sam senayaro, ta telan jogo yoris, jetange lama sen lamia tele labore, lama la hesa kukul soya tele labore, ta che. Tanang number tabula tangoni, Lama Teda Dembaseni, and there you go Yosando, Samba Goge, Sambig, Yasada, Kukur, Checha Lasso, but number not of Zoyate, Pena, Le Labori. Le Labo Yenaya, Lama Chinap, Yen and Yupatel, the Negre Labo Yomadi, one egg chet Tanangi, shooting cassette Povatella. Yanda Nello Surgeon, the one to cubic Lama Chiyana, Tatela, Troyman, Tanyomari. kora lohin chilo la tena tembandabu ke nelo yons dobo nana zek dogo de mato cheke kora dunzi ke zonhin dabo tela penata lame ke tukju nyebe ke tamdabo yomari te nyebe ke tamdabo menna tene lame chena hinla hyok se ate yampe mase pe kale kapore di yori te taba mayin pala Dieu la chöji yontin te jumse tela tene tene lamme chena senran yo mato payina ranye ki Dieu la chöji yontin yang tabaji ta chen nombe ke chola yon dondo ke zunghin rabo to ya te se le labo rabo te ngone ki ye deba te henone jan kale kapore Dieu la chöji yontin yang tabaji yon henone jan kale kapore te cher sabra so ata yontin te tabu chenna tene mechi pe tepe ke koni tene so sabra matela so ata na tene te tabu ke chanap sin ju tope ke jumten la tene so ata sin so are lam don ga
Oh, you know, Shana, do say.
so
In the 5th, 6th, and 7th lines, Terchen Barway Dorje addresses the importance of devotion. He writes, if your Guru's blessing doesn't enter your heart, it is hard for Dharmic qualities to arise in your being. Pray, therefore, to your root Guru. It is relatively easy for us to demonstrate external respect for the Guru. But actually receiving the Guru's blessing involves more than that. Because if the Guru is authentic and genuine, they're not going to be pleased or seduced by mere external demonstrations of respect or kowtowing and so on. Nevertheless, if we don't receive the blessing of an authentic Guru, and the Guru must be someone, Rinpoche said, who possesses a realization, otherwise they don't have any blessing to impart. If we don't receive the blessing of an authentic Guru, it is unlikely, to say the least, that any authentic Dharmic qualities will arise in our being. It might be very easy for us to mimic the behavior of authentic practitioners. We observe them, we start to act like them, we imitate them, and so on. And we might be able to fool some other people, but nothing will be happening to us on the inside. Pray, therefore, to your root Guru. The source of blessings is not external attempts to please or somehow seduce the Guru. The source of blessings is sincere, wholehearted prayer.
Penta ndala tambe chore ngoma to sam chamba chobola yode de kapsula ta ne ko batende je semye tende se denke ko janwa to sam chamba kondela jar la sa ta ta to ka sa kala son ne ko te kon to sam chamba kondela ta nga ke semye se denke ke metende yin ta tende ta ne son de ta be sinke ji yode pela semye
Be.
Mena, be telling ma karina, chijeke.
Kanda yore. Sentin kanda yore.
Be se de chua marwa,
Chewa mare. Me sentin chechung kanda re.
kane yore.
Wada wore.
Wa dabo, wa men sanaji yo.
Wale chongware, wale cheware.
Fox.
De wa lapna de sa.
Ta tendechi kona ta ko te mambo segi yo servo. Tendo ta te tawa ni segi men sen tene ko kelni ku. Tene ko ma paila lo che ndo nindo. Ko ta jana shor de oro. Te shon de nyama je ko la ko san ta yung sama de ta se yana ma to ten. Te ko juba che la pa la ju. Tene kona be te la Yard and the capsule, yet to some chamber, Kalmapa. Better sell it to send the Jabresco. Jab the capsule, bell of Hockey Shah, Conan Gardon,
The Karina, the Dungrebe, Jupachi.
Juba.
Oh, Jupa, yeah.
Jupa, Dung yourself. Yet to some chamber, Kalmapa. Better sell it to send the cotton, that's Zigamatic thing. You got the show, taking down the bell of my folk, I don't want to poke. Yeah, and not like them to Bandabu. Chumma, that one get that to some chamber senator come up on them out to some the chains and the Koran, Logan and the order of us. That and then that would take in the capsule that the Koran Tamki, Zipam, to some chamber singing the water. The Tabu gave Tambayena, Mazik to so that was your money.
There's a story about this, that during the lifetime of the first Jawang Karmapa Dusum Jenpa, when he was living at his newly founded monastery of Tsurpo, a pilgrim came to see him who had been on pilgrimage through the Lhasa and other areas. And this guy was, I guess he was a furrier, because he tended to kill foxes, and he made his living by killing these foxes or fox-like animals and presumably selling the furs or something. Anyway, he went in front of Dusum Jenpa and he promised him, he said, from today onward I will kill no more foxes. So, and then he went back home, and after a while then he found his hands starting to get itchy. He wanted to go out and kill foxes. And so he grabbed a club. I guess he clubbed foxes to death. And is that possible? I mean, I guess if you're really fast, I mean, foxes are... Oh, okay. Well, Rinpoche said he had a club anyway. And he grabbed a club and he was about to spring on a fox and kill it. And he called out, he said, Lord Dusum Jenpa, do you see me killing this fox? And then he swung the club. And because of the prayer he made, he missed the fox and hit his own leg. Probably, it sounds like he smashed his own kneecap. And, which is... Yeah, it's his shin. That's even worse. Well, it's equally bad. Anyway, and hit himself in the shin with a club. And this is a story about the benefits of praying to the Karmapa. But no, he says if the teacher to whom you pray is omniscient, as the first Karmapa was named for being after, was named knower of the three times because he knew everything, then there's no time that they're not seeing you. Rinpoche said when he called out to Dusum Jenpa, he was doing so somewhat sarcastically. He thought Dusum Jenpa wasn't aware of him. But Dusum Jenpa was, which is why the fox got saved and his shin got at least bruised.
Ransem rango hebe somate loye mari majo teinga rambap nganta nenjo chechonya mai samji jönde jangwale de jande ji sando zando je reda masal jona megaso redo tabanaya Milarepa jona tabe tanjin de banjurus ta te jesula ta oneke sem sorgendo le jona ke sondabote son kapsula ta rang sem sosu sem tani ta kora sem dalla tene tapa da tamjen jemba kompanya dalla tene tagu yori ngan son som den chambe ki jumsen da te yang sem dalla tene yung yori ta te tabu sem tela khande ji yobar sen ta sal yendo tomba ton yendo sabe ki rangi tene zangen ki namdo ka hana yang hara romwe ki ta sem singen jigla ta tongbarang ji ngana samala yobari te tabu ki sem te teni nomto zambu ki je sundobu kapsula teni kora le zambu Yomake Kona Sawanda Yado Yodi. Nyambeka on the show capsulata, Langamba, Duhan number Naso by Yongobeki. Teni Samundabo, Takona Landa was the son of Yodi. Or Tetabeke Ngang the Mashawa, Ransen Rango the He Zamjik. Takora Hako Zamjik, same in Kora Hako Zamjik and Nangla. Teni Zanging Namdog Tola Mandova, Somatege, Nana said, Sang Namdog Kare, Shawa taking Nana. Ta kona ya tabajik. Tela loyi marik majo tengang. Ta tela loyi goni. On the zamborindo, the nyambarindo, sambeke goni. Kyo masonga chik majo patengang la. Rambab to stati ngana ne tabajik. Te mato chik kana ya manjurwa tende chik ngana. Ne ba mato ne jo cheng ramba ngang ngang ne jo cheng che chong yang ramba ke ngala ne be kapsula ta bena ne thugri nam to che ngala ne ba yin na ya nam to che jor song yin no so sa de wa ne jo se de ba
Mare ne jo la
ne jo sing
ne pa tan jo are la.
Nebati Jora Kare Jonga Yenayang Teni Maying Zamji Jundi Jambale Sta Kora Ying Mando was Tam Jigeta Jun Janya Tele Dejan Deji Sando Sando Ji Stanamdo Zambo Chishon O Tate Namdo Ya Zambo Rindo Tela Tembeking Legan Dedan de Chagin de Chegin Samatabo Tate Sando Tang, Zando Je Rewatang, Mesan Jona Megawa so, Redo Takpe Namia Malepa, Redo Gwan Namia Malepa, Jona Tabetan Hindu Banjuari. Teta Lobo Temba Tajang or De King Yabi Yabakon. Barway Dorje, Yutam Nila, Nes, the Hinjabot, Korang Ming Sandwa.
Kashi the temper daje shua, the dumbo dejin jumbo, temper dajela. The shuroche, drawachi inside go.
Inside, the Hinjabot Mingere.
Red, Kansak chicken mingere. The next 8 lines of the song present the principal instruction on how to rest the mind in self-recognition. It begins, rest freely in the freshness of your mind recognizing itself. So this is all about the mind, our minds. And it is our mind that achieves liberation, and it is possible for our mind to achieve liberation because of what the mind is. It is also our mind that undergoes rebirth, including lower rebirth, and that is possible because we are unaware of what the mind is. Whenever our mind follows a thought, it accumulates karma. The first thought does not accumulate karma, but the response to that thought, where we are captured by and attached to and follow that thought, begins the accumulation of karma. If the thoughts we follow are positive, noble, we accumulate good karma. If they are negative, malicious, we accumulate bad karma. But in either case, we are not in control. We are not free. The alternative, therefore, is to not follow thought, but to rest freely. Now, resting freely means allowing the mind to settle in and of itself. But in what are we resting? We're resting in the freshness of our mind recognizing itself. So in other words, in order to rest freely in this way, your mind must recognize itself. And it must do so in a state of freshness, which means the mind is looking at itself in the present moment. Freshness is the alternative to staleness. Whenever we prolong the past, think about the past, or speculate about the future, that is stale. It is not fresh. It is conceptual. It is not direct. So the first instruction is rest freely in the freshness of your mind, recognizing itself. Now, this means that there are certain things you are not doing. So therefore, he says, without the ignorant alterations of the intellect. The ignorant alterations of the intellect are all of our concepts, the thoughts that we might give rise to. Now, for example, in the case of meditation, you might not be following the thoughts that arise spontaneously in your mind, but you might start generating thoughts about the act of meditation. This is good, this is bad, this could be better, and so on. And that is not resting freely in your mind's freshness. And then he says, whether there is stillness or movement, just cultivate mere no distraction. Whether your mind is still, without thoughts, or moving, whether there are thoughts present or moving within the mind, you simply do the same thing. You simply cultivate a state without distraction. Distraction consists, as we've seen, of being captured by thoughts. Therefore, no distraction is a state where your mind is aware of itself. Never pollute it with, I'm doing this, or I will do that. I'm doing this is a judgment about the meditation, a concept. I will do that is thinking about the future. Desire for clarity, hope for the good. So hope and craving for progress and so on. Dislike of obscurity and movement and other fears. These are things we wish to avoid. So never polluted with I'm doing this, I will do that. Desire for clarity, hope for the good, dislike of obscurity and movement and other fears. Whenever we have preferences with regard to states of mind, in other words, our mind is looking at itself and it's not as clear as we want. We hope it will be better. We dislike obscurity, or we would prefer that there be less movement in the mind, that there would be more stillness. These are all pollution. The movement, the obscurity, the lack of clarity are not problems. What is a problem is our hope and fear, our concepts and preferences, our picking and choosing, because we are, in choosing, in having those preferences, we are ignoring the mind itself. By cultivating this, you will accomplish your great goal of liberation. By resting freely in the freshness of your mind, recognizing itself, you will achieve that goal. And this was written in a moment by Barway Dorje for the disciple Tenpa Dorje at the request of Terchen Barway. So the rest of the time will be devoted to questions. Anything this morning stuff or this afternoon stuff, anything.
Yeah? 1 minute.
Yes, I just wondered, is it on?
Yeah, I think so.
I just wanted to ask, how come there's many enlightened Tulkus and they're fighting between each other? How is it possible? Because we're all teachers are enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're enlightened, they realize the oneness and the essence and purity of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they have conflicts? What is some kind of a spontaneous dance of
Mm-hmm.
someone talk about his liberation, or I don't know what's going on. Why they cannot find the common language? If they claim to know three times, this doesn't make any sense.
Ding song ge do sa yang tropical number ge pension la super mamba jagi ores. Da kon number ngone ge soshin de samshin de jewa lama ge troku ngoma yana konso ge sangama ne jong trup top zawa ge gansa res. Jong trup top zawa ge gansa la tropa yong misipa res. Ding de konso ge de tropa yong misene konso ge pension la super mamba jap. The dopo mompo song de zo the doga trapa samre kandare.
다 년이 때 때때 저한다 보도 고 요구 저하래서 얘는요 고 요구도 레사고 됐었나 되게 답대원다고 용거래 다 삼연도 세반녀와 좀게 코나 또베고직 파샤 이와 인다고 치나 다 들은 카다 코나 21st century 다 생이 조금 토 된게 강대 요래 오늘 다는 가난서 강자 소세 제워지라 달레라마스 맹다 표현도진의 상매 달레라마 나부디마도 저 레몬도 소제가 나온 거 말이야 다 된다고 인도가서라 조금 그 강사래 돈도니데 예와 파서 땅나야 본다고 대땅 사주 값을라 되는 초기 제원된 bettobe kok은 제바지이나 다들 싸면 잡아 줘요리 오늘 다네게 초케로 송게 고니 코라 들어생게데 케로 용이요 말이 가래를 초 송는 들고 요래 가래를 예 땅는 들고 요래 가래를 땅에 뭐 해는 들고 요래 다 던데 글로지 참아데 다 녀세 제게 또요가 나는 저랑 그 딱이나 대강가 jor사와리 딱이나 빼마시브 세보 용거레스 강라 강들 텔라 텔톤 바스마 제네들 찬살로 송도와스 다 강라 찍도 텔라 텔톤 바스게나 다데 코란 셈보리 마도 칼라징이나 사마체케로 상마근데가라 사고르세나 템레디오레 사마레요 마리 소소 가리 가나테 산타 페힘보요레 텐다보레야 텔라 코나 삼차베 조요레 가나니 다베게 조요 마리 가라 온히요 마리 차나나 요 마리 때 많이 빠지게 강사 소시 제워 뚜베고게 맹지 zon아지게 텐데 칭히 요바이나 다때 코라 사파 람데 효요레 담베 쳐 두부 요레 쳐 돕네 소스게 셈제데 녀모데 ndorgo 삼비겐 도시 샤바진 요레 텔라테네 코라 도구 요레 때니 바다니야 징징 초제가 왕도 단징에 단다 현로 임방 냠바랑 효효데라남세 텐다보 조데 카우슬라 테네 코라 ङेके जंदा के तोंदल तोपा ङेके पांजो के तोंदल तोपा तम ह्यंदा के तोंदल तोपा मांबो लेबु योरे ते मासे बा मारे न्योमो संगे तंगो मानो साने खांदा काइना से बारे
Dona de drebo top zawa dang lamla shukshindo ki chepa
तेने छपा छमरे
Well,
Excuse me, would you please restate the question for the benefit of the webcast? I didn't have the microphone on.
you didn't have the microphone. Okay. Nowadays, tulkus it is not uncommon for tulkus to be disputing with one another. If there are the rebirths of enlightened or awakened beings, then they must be omniscient. in which case, how can there be grounds for such disputation among them? Is that? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, in one sense, this is a troublesome and complicated question, but in another way, it's very easy to simplify it and reduce it to the truth. There are lots and lots of people who are called tulkus nowadays. Tulku, as you probably know, is a translation of Nirmanakaya. So in its truest meaning, it means a Nirmanakaya Buddha. But it's used widely and popularly to indicate the recognized rebirth of a Lama. So the title Tulku itself does not actually specify, as it's used nowadays, does not actually specify the spiritual state or rank of the person bearing that title. In addition, in this 21st century, we have the additional complicating factor of incredible freedom of self-promotion, so that people can call themselves anything they want. People are nowadays very commonly recognizing themselves as tulkus. And because there are no laws against it, there's nothing you could do. I mean, Rinpoche said someone could call himself the Dalai Lama, and we wouldn't be able to do anything to stop him. But if we leave aside those tulkus who are not really tulkus at all, if there are two types of tulkus who are fit to bear the title as it is traditionally used in Tibetan culture. One type of tulku is the most authentic. They are actually Nirmanakaya Buddha. They are the not just the rebirth of an enlightened person, but they are fully awakened. There are such individuals. But because they are truly awakened and therefore truly responsive to the actual needs of beings, they are not going to act according to our expectations. They will teach Dharma when and where it is the most beneficial thing for them to do. But they will do all sorts of other things if it's going to help beings more. They may spend their time singing or talking or doing other things relating to others in all sorts of ways that we would not recognize as dharmic. Now, the best example of this I can give you, the traditional example, is Mipam Rinpoche's book, Garland of Jewels, the 8 Bodhisattvas. And if you read that book, which has been translated into English, then that will give you an idea of how actual Buddhas and how variable the behavior of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can be. Because such individuals will appear as whatever will best suit and guide other beings, it's very hard for us to understand them. They are as unlikely to impose a certain spiritual institution on others as a good restaurant is to serve only one dish. If a restaurant said we're only going to serve one kind of food because we think this is the best kind of food and this is all anybody needs, we would find that objectionable. In the same way, an authentic awakened being is going to be extremely flexible and responsive to the actual needs of beings, not merely the maintenance of some kind of institution. So therefore, the appraisal of the acts of such a being is utterly beyond me, and I believe utterly beyond you. So there's no point in our discussing that type of tulku further, because we can't begin to understand them. The second type of tulku is more common, and this is the properly recognized rebirth of a good Lama. they have a habit of good Dharma practice from their previous life. They have, or at least begin with good intentions. They want to diminish their kleshas. They want to progress along the path. They want to help their monastery and their students, and they want to do what they're supposed to do. But they're not enlightened. They're on the path. And because they're not enlightened, then they are still subject to the previous habits, as we all are. They're still subject to resurgence of the 8 concerns of the world: pleasure and pain and gain and loss and praise and criticism and euphony and diseuphony or cacophony. So, because they can become selfish or corrupted, then conflicts are going to happen.
Lama sedo kandegi nantayin tangin sen sengimalo. Sedo segoma sengeti ta pe masib garajin
Sutu chupa.
Ede.
Chupa te pema kunzang.
Ede ote
Sugoma.
Te. Ta pema konzante gor one tane ta tondeng endo payu ni kona shawa senghe da jangin ge ta meda wo chongani.
Lasa.
Namza jacheji. Shaji ji go jotin de ti. Tene ponyo ganga te kona tem menda koda ta rel pem no ken. Kodo rada ganga se no ken. Ta tene ji chone tama ke ta se do se go ma sen ta ke da ya gon ke ji kon chone. Te na ya lama kon sen hyan da che ta yu ring ta de se che ke ta se do mari ta la to go ya mari. Jolam se do ere se na ta re yo mari. Take a task go mass, such a lab, make a miss a time on what. Not the edge pep the Yamachi and Massan chicken and a pair massive and men never double. Then the Lodam Mongol na shot Papa the Rubamato, Tan Malawach. Papa Ruba Kero, Chen the dead, you know, then call a shake on the Sawan in the Mavach. Then that's your race. The long Mongol in your son in your Sawan.
Pore more.
Pore. Then the Matamagata, the Kareli, same chat, the Bayana, and the one, Papa Nimato Mendo, Shigan Mendo. That is, then the general cedrum much heavy order, till the Gyamtso Kyoko those. Then they show on the castle, and take it in Andros on the power.
Sugomata.
None of them thought that Lama Yana and a Karagogri, Yamro Malam, Kaku Giti, Zogo. Then they are my stack or Joseph to be quick of the badge of the Joseph. Then it Joseph to get like that. Then they take party John, they call part John him, again the mix said and dog.
Bart Johnson,
Part of the
Mahjong.
Mahjong.
Yeah.
And they was said and dog. Then they got in that making the day that got in that.
So mid.
Oh, yeah, and they JJ so.
Oh, yeah.
Then they on that time got in that the third tail of them, that cranky jatum with the on this. That making Nasa again tell her. Some chapter joy on the way or it. One and got it, Nick Nasa order. They couldn't make Nasa to marry. Call one at and take a park, still more to stay with him. That done it. Thank him, Mataba, and the tack on Nason, the little Lodana, near San Ron, the what in the Chong at the time, and doing that on the Hakoyam and the what. Cocoron Dombanda, don't fight shake you, I hear them, so I get have you come and do what. Say, but chat some of us on it. That tend our mamma or it.
Then a not so gay, read it. Till I tell some judges or go side.
Kare zogo sadin the thing. Yambo ya but.
Boy, watch it. That dinner mid Shima song. To give you an example, the current Taisutsu Rinpoche is the 12th, and the 10th Sutto Rinpoche, so 2 Suttus past, who lived in the second half of the 19th century, was called Pema Kunzang, but in the Rinpoche said where he's from, they called him Wild Suttu. because he didn't act like any of his predecessors nor any of his successors. He acted like a layperson. He hunted deer, and so he kept a coterie of hunting dogs, and his attendants were forced to accompany him on hunting trips with guns, and he wasn't, what anyone expected. Now, no one disbelieved that he was the 10th Sittu. Everyone was sure he was the 10th Sittu, but they just accepted the fact that he was unconventional and that he did not behave and was not going to behave like any previous Sittu Rinpoche. And so they called him Wild Sittu. Now, there was a man who had been gravely ill for so many years that he was reduced to skin and bone, and never was completely conscious, but seemed unable to die. And people who knew him were amazed at the fact that this guy was still alive, because they couldn't understand what was keeping his mind within his body. In any case, when the 10th Sittu Rinpoche was in the area, they decided to invite him, hoping that he would somehow bestow a blessing on this man. And they had no hope of the man recovering, because he'd been sick for so long, but they thought maybe at least he could help him, give him a blessing, and he could die in peace or something like that. So they invited Sittu Rinpoche into the man's home, his room. Now, normally, when you invite a high lama into your home for something like this, then they'll give the person a refuge vow, they'll perform some kind of banishment of obstructors, and they'll perform ceremonies for your benefit. And, it will involve a lot of chanting. In this case, however, when Sittu Rinpoche was brought in and he'd agreed to see the man, he asked for a mahjong table to be set up, and he started playing mahjong. And as he played mahjong and was clicking the tiles and whatnot, the old man, the dying old man, started to approach consciousness, and eventually his eyes opened and he looked over at the mahjong table and began to pay attention to it. And after a while longer, he got up and went to the mahjong table and started to play mahjong with Sittu Rinpoche, and he was cured. Now, anybody else, any conventional lama, would have done ceremonies, would have given a blessing, and it wouldn't have changed anything. The guy would have remained in his state, would have done him very, very little good. But because this Wild Sittu, the 10th Sittu, was the real thing, he knew what would really help.
Yeah.
Less so.
His Holiness Tingo Chense Rinpoche.
Mm-hmm.
Tamaking another Kobanje Yong, Church Yong, Hakon. Tingo Chense Rinpoche, and Hamo Gono Chong Gaps at Teni, Bem Masibaka Rabjon. Teni Chogo, Sonze Nang, Chipatan and Meshepne, Shafan Pebno Kiordis. That's it, and they get commodities. Pema
She not much. Something.
Pema one shot jabbo. Tande sit and they get commodities. Pema one shot jabbo. Them John talk at the Mazek de Comini. Call Tinko Saga ko Tata ko Tambichaka. Sani can make the afternoon. That and they go on the Yellow Gyamtso.
Another Sutta Rinpoche story. Now we're up to the 11th. First of all, Rinpoche said, you know, these authentic holy beings are not like us. They see things we don't see. They do things for different reasons, and we can't understand. Most of you, probably all of you, have heard of, and some of you no doubt met, His Holiness Dingo Chinsu Rinpoche, the previous Dingo Chinsu Rinpoche, who for most of his life, especially all of his later life, was a tantrika, a married Lama. But what many people in this country don't know is that in his youth, he was a very, very strict monastic, a very strict monk. And he was so strict in his adherence to the monastic vows that in fact he would not ride a horse because he felt that it was a violation of the Vinaya, which always meant it made travel very difficult for him. The story goes that at one time the 11th Sutta Rinpoche, the predecessor, so the one after the 10th, the Wild Sutta, and the one before the current 12th Sutta Rinpoche, the 11th Sutta Rinpoche, Pemawang Chokjalpo, was looking out of his window and saw Dingo Chense Rinpoche when he was very, very young and still a good monk, walking, and said, Dilgo Salga won't ride a horse, will he? Well, he'll be riding a person before this life is over. And so that
Life over, mother, Tigadang. Go to Tigadang.
that's what I said before this life
That's
is over.
Then that the corn number sand of your mother.
Yeah.
Choke tropical sing it, that is on the Mamoy.
Yeah.
That Tande get Toko can say your tongue and on Davoina. Then it got to gagate, do, then it cannot telling about your money.
So supreme tulkus, the best, are like that. They see the past, present, and future. The rest of us who bear the name Tulku, Rinpoche said, are just like everybody else. When we're pleased, we're nice and happy, and when we're displeased, we're grumpy, just like everybody else.
Next one.
Who's next? Someone?
Okay.
Rinpoche, this comes from the internet.
Oh.
Please explain more about what an emanation is, and also the significance of body emanation, speech emanation, etc. For example, what is a body emanation? What are the qualities or characteristics of that emanation versus speech?
Chidonso de trupa pena guru ke ko song to yanden tinle chi trupa mobo ke kesha do trupa sewa karere da ku tru da sung tru da tu tru de zo ke chepa karere.
That is so much song.
Ngamishi. Ngone te ku tru de pena de
Go, Jatang, go to Sena, go to cock tenet.
yorere. Ah, the guru ke yana de ne. Deshigdu baga wong la de meto popega la to ne. Dona pena. Nurchin la pesha na. Yeah. Well, in general, there are different types of body, speech, mind qualities and activities of teachers, so that they can have these 5 emanations who are recognized to embody the qualities of one or another of those 5 aspects of their predecessors' being. In the case of Guru Rinpoche's emanations, however, it has a very specific meaning, because the 25 disciples were 25 disciples of Guru Rinpoche who received a particular empowerment from him altogether at the same time in the caves of Chimpu. And because of the significance of the occasion, when they cast their flowers into the mandala, and these were flowers sculpted from gold, but given to each by the king who sponsored, Trisong Detsen, who sponsored the empowerment. The significance, the interdependence was strong enough in their case that it actually landed on the deities to which they had karmic affiliation. So, for example, the emanation of body, Nupchen Sonje Yeshe, was considered Guru Rinpoche's emanation of body because he was actually the incarnation of Manjushri, who was the body of all Buddhas. And so his flower landed on the peaceful and wrathful forms of Manjushri, Manjushri Yamantaka. In the same way, the emanation of Guru Rinpoche's speech, Jawa Choyong, was an emanation of the Bodhisattva Avalokita, Chenrezig. And therefore, his flower landed on the deity Hayagriva, the wrathful form of Chenrezig. And we know that the Jawan Karmapa, who is the same being, is Chenrezig in person. In the same way, with each of them, their flower landed on the deity of whom they were embodiments. So in a sense, you can consider them emanations of Guru Rinpoche's body, speech, mind, qualities, and activity, but also they are emanations of the body, speech, mind, qualities, and activity of all Buddhas.
Yeah.
Hi, Rinpoche. Thank you for the teaching. Is this on?
Sounds like it.
Okay. So I have a question about the mind looking at the mind. I'm not very good at that at all. What happens for me is that, and I try to do this frequently throughout the day, just to try to practice it. But what will happen is I'll be looking for a while, and then I'll kind of notice that I've wandered and fixed onto a thought. And the minute that happens, that I realize that I fixed onto a thought, then the whole cascade starts, and I'm like, okay, I can't do that. I'm fixating on it, and then it's all over with. And then, so how do it's easy enough to say relax, but once you tell your mind to relax, it sort of like grabs on to whatever is around, and I don't know how to let it release. So I don't look at my mind with my mind very often. I find that Guru Yoga practice is very useful for me because I can allow my mind to rest in and as a deity, and then when it comes to the completion stage, I'm sort of in a position of relaxation in a way where I can allow myself to do that. But just having my mind look at my mind, is there advice that you could give for that?
Namdo takes Tim Tapper Jones. Namdo takes Tim Tapper Jones. Namdo the young boy, Yago days. Penna, Pengan Jamba Zambu, Tanda, Dojin Chandon Penangla. Namdo, no chukur song by him, and song to us. Jian, Mayin, Jian, Chavala song to us. Namdo sing it, the Koran Shagres go. Yabo Shagre, Yamba Shagre, Dumbo Shagre, Tama Shagre. That Zambaling Della Shaju Menamato Yose Gangati Namdo Shagre. Jian Mayin Jian Chavala, Manga, Robert Chabu Compins and the song to us. That Tanda Namdo Chanante Kande Regi Yorsen, Namdo Shayong Capsula, then it Yamana Yangsin, the Yamana Korai, that Namdo the short on some begin to Shinda was jigging. So Dimiak Chachi Yoris. So not the going Chachi Yoris. That then that was in a Shine kora ngone ngone hine sambo ga gongke na tenne te gogres te majena tane sem na to ne to mares ngone se ko ne ripa kare le dung yona tela dem go yode ta lam nan jo don ne sem ran hyo ga na to ne palan de he tang ne gongke na ta te ke nam to ngonjin ta nam to ke to de tane go mares nam to kare hya jwa ina 되게 그 나는 샤죠 샤죠는 샤와 되게 나나 거나 장에 근데 했다는 매바 전에 람밥스 야트바이나 되네 tel라 쟁마이 쟁샤와라 망가 로번 차고 공긴 스타트리 거나 남도데 거나 다 거나 초국에 거나 랑자레스 nga nyamate gogun dogde te meba chene nge nyamate che thong gogun do sena ta tenga ra so yung ya tan yo ma des nyama yo sana ho yo de ho tang nyamate ni ta ma de pa gran ji che ma to che ge ta nyama san ho thong ju yo ma re ho san nyama thong ju yo ma des te nyama se ba des te end ka so la nam do ganga mele zone ne te ne chu ji ko chen thong ya yo ma Then, again, my chawa, maga, robber chawa, taking on the yatumna, that gum to not the net bodies. That the native janatani, Honda yeme, but topic it in Tapian, what you see what.
You're being too tight with thoughts. You're trying to hold on to them. You're worried that in other words, you're trying to keep a thought there so that you can look at it. Like you're trying to lasso. I can't say this word. How do you say this word in America? Really? It's hard for me to say because then it sounds to me like a mispronunciation of the Tibetan word lasso. So I can't, and I never learned to say lasso in Canada. We say lasso. So anyway, all right, that. You're trying to snare your thoughts and hold on to them. That's okay in a beginner's version of shamatha practice. That would be, in fact, necessary for a beginner. But it's not appropriate and no longer necessary in what you're doing. Remember what it says in the lineage supplication, in which Bengo Jumpo Zangpo wrote, "It is taught that the nature of thoughts is Dharmakaya." So this doesn't mean that when a thought arises, you need to keep that thought there so you can look at it and see the Dharmakaya. It means that as thoughts come and go, the nature of the whole thing is Dharmakaya. And just as there need be no preference for the absence of thoughts, you don't have to prefer the presence of thought either, which means you don't have to hold on to a thought. What you're actually looking at is the mind that is looking. And it doesn't matter whether there's a thought present or not. That's why he says, nothing whatsoever, it can yet appear as anything. So it can. The nature of thought is that awareness that is looking at the thought. That's what you're looking at. It can appear as anything. And that's why he uses the expression in the third line, to the meditator for whom it appears as an unceasing play. An unceasing play is like, for example, watching a dramatic performance. You don't try to freeze it and stop it at one point. You let it go by. You can't hold on to it. So instead of trying to hold on to thoughts, just rest freely within the process and accept the fact that the movement of thought, the passing of thoughts, the variation in the appearance of thoughts, nice thoughts, pleasant thoughts, unpleasant thoughts, neutral thoughts, boring thoughts, all kinds of thoughts, is a natural part of the display of your mind. When we attempt to control or limit thought, either by getting rid of it or by holding on to it. It's like Rinpoche said, someone saying, well, I want to see the sun, but without its light. Now, I want to see the sun, but not that light part. Let's get rid of that light part. Well, the two are inseparable. If there's Dharmakaya, the Dharmakaya is going to have display, and that display is thoughts. And that is why learning to overcome this is how you realize the inseparability of samsara and nirvana.
I thank you so much for this. It came to me as the explanation was being given that, and I really just recognized this, that there's actually a feeling of almost falling, that I am physically falling, like as if I'm diving off a cliff, and there's almost a visceral response to grabbing onto thoughts, and that has just occurred to me that that's actually might be what's going on. So I'm hopeful that with the recognition that I'm not going to fall, that maybe I'll be able to relax a little bit.
Yeah, in at all times you need to relax.
Thank you.
Thank you for the teaching again, Rinpoche. So kind of, I guess, going along the same line, it seems a lot of times when I try and look at my mind, it's like there's something there, and kind of like the thought is that if I'm experiencing something, that's not it, because then it's distraction. So it's not really easy to explain, when I look, what I'm seeing, but when I look, it's like a bright light, but it's not there. So I know that I'm conceptualizing, because I feel like I'm experiencing something when I do the looking.
Is the conceptualizing occurring afterward in your analysis of the experience, or does it occur during the experience?
So
in other words, like you said, that it's like a bright light, except that there's nothing really there. These are concepts to describe your experience that you've come up with in post-meditation. That doesn't necessarily mean that the experience itself is conceptual.
I think maybe some of my problem is I'm not a particularly verbal thinker. When I'm thinking things, it's usually not with a word. So my mind's very good at tricking me. It's an experience, but it's not like I'm thinking, oh, light or something. It's not verbal. But so that makes it a little tricky, I guess.
So what is your reservation about your experience? You're concerned that because there's a sense of that there's something rather than nothing, that it's in some way misguided?
I'm worried that maybe I'm conceptualizing a thought or the experience and trying to hold on to that.
Dako semngao tado de Gyamtso nyongju yores. Gyamtso nyongju de yopa na mepa nigi nane yopa rawores. Inan de kaya laptungumandos. Perna sacha rawachi yore inan. Ngone sacha de mixa sacha di rawore de rawore lapjumandos. Inan korong de nyamnyon de la dokpa zagidos. Dokpa zaju de chikchenan de namtok la zimba sam yana dokpa zagidos.
Mama ngendo rumdik la yog deva kabla ta labra ge lekhon na la machen ji yore machen te kebo pabachi ta tege ko semo shobo sene tangora mujukun jasmare teni semo nangore semo nang ta ko de che ya po gam sho asani sem de kande jindo ngale ya labje yo ba chi ko song ale tene ko song donda jing jela ta ko sem la ta ke ba bo ta yo da ko Sangota, that the Conde, Cheta, Cosimbo, Zon Yamting, Zon Semla, Taki down the Tangalanso, and the Gyamtso day on the that done me, Sam Yana Mayim, which in the day then, Ogi Joat, Tormodua. That got dead in the Tamaris.
Decemberes.
Dead in the Tamaris. That got down, that got a Sam with the Candelos, Sam that put tuck, then the day Taji Sam gay, Motella, Kora, Tom Matabache. They Taji, Nambachi, the Yin from Mendos, Langan. So now the wind, the mother, Yin can have on my day, the same water that to Tanya.
When I was living at Rumtek Monastery, there was a cook, an old Tibetan man, who went to Trungpa Rinpoche to have his mind's nature pointed out to him. And Trungpa Rinpoche did so, and then told the elderly man, now go off and meditate well, and come back and tell me what you experience. Well, in order to meditate on this, the man found himself a way to control his environment to make it very, very quiet. And he sat very, very quietly. And in the absence of any noise around him, and in the absence of thinking or being busy, he found that he was aware of his breathing. And so he thought, oh, this must be the mind's nature. The mind is this. So he went back to Trungpa Rinpoche and he said, the mind is this thing that goes. And what had happened was he had not seen the mind's nature, but had seen kind of part of its display and was fixating on that as the nature. And Rinpoche said, my feeling is that maybe that's what you're talking about. That's what you're reporting.
That was my worry. So
Okay.
So then the question is,
Sam Korang in the little stuff.
Yeah.
Sam Penna, Namdo, Sharing one, take Yella Mandovache, Namdo, take all the towers. Namdo, ten Yorayana, Namdo Yamba, take all the Tate, Mountain, Royari, Mato, take all the Yandachi, and the Takora, take on Sam Temaris.
Looking at the nature of mind is not archaeology. You're not trying to dig under and find some sort of underlayer or something hidden underneath. You're looking at the nature of what is obvious within your mind. Rinpoche said, when a thought is present in your mind and you're looking at the nature of mind, simply look directly at that thought. And when the thought vanishes, then let it go and look at just what's there at any given moment. So you're not trying to strip away layers and find something hidden underneath.
that helps. Then I guess the follow-up question to that is, I think if I'm not, it's kind of like a balancing act between looking at things and being mindful, but then if I feel like if I let go too much, then I'm just being lazy and I'm not being mindful anymore and I'm following thoughts.
The shuk the rigbala the sal ngar mazona te yengro gres.
Tate, Tandate, Jesim Milarepa, Ta Yamapadabam, La Kora Pem Mamboche Goni, Sam Tate Nayawari. Then Jigla, Ta Pe Chicken de Sando. Namfan della Pelonla, Tave Map Gombian those and so on. Namfa sing it the Dombaraba, Nanato Yata do Combate. Kora Jin Namka Senata, Namka de Kara things, rank topic, Jojana thing, J. Combat on the Ta Combandos and the Kora Jin Namka Sinata, Kora, Doga, Davotilla, Ton, and Namka, Humbos, Lab Yawade, Maton, Namka Tilan, Tada, Uzani Homaris. Then a te Tawachig gum jobs and the Kanaris. Then a Morank, don't be sure Capsulata, Namka singing the gum the token dog day. Floating gum the Gyamtso and the Songaris. Floating take it up, floating singing the Tatondola, Nom Dote, Kora Rangola Tamata, Nom Dote, Kora. Yetang Sam Nello, the Surgeon the Hako in a young. Nom Dog and Ngot Choco in Bahako Matumne. Nom Do tip and a floating double take a patchy, you can do some. The Shake Koran, Tosma was. Benna, Chotang, the Balamni, Kaka Yimanda, Tosmanda was. Tondang or Macho Balab, the Balab Chori, Telanta, your mother was. Or te, Tawachikate, Tachi, Tor, Samrang, Geranki Kari in Batella, Tatumna Yabuyondo.
In teaching meditation to his female disciple, Paldarbum, Jetsun Milarepa used 5 different analogies. And when she reported her experience, she came back reporting it using the analogies that he had used. One of these will do. One of the analogies he used was the sky or space. And he said, take the sky as an analogy for your mind and meditate without center or end. Now, when we think of the sky, of course, we think of the blue sky. But the blue sky is not the space. It's not space itself. It's what's called in Tibetan the ornamental sky. In other words, it's a visual effect. And so what Milarepa was talking about was not the blueness of the sky, but the fact that space, being without end, also has no center. When Paldarbum returned, she said to Milarepa, I could meditate upon the sky, but not upon the clouds that appeared within it. And it was clear from her description that she differentiated between the sky per se and the clouds that appeared within it. But she was being too narrow in her definition of sky. Because when you say, do you see the sky, that would include the clouds. It's like, for example, making too much of a distinction, Rinpoche said, between water and waves. Waves are the form water may take on its surface, but they're made up of nothing other than water.
Is that perhaps?
I'll have to keep thinking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Rinpoche, there are a couple of questions here from the webcast. This one is about different types of terma. This morning you mentioned there were 18 kinds of terma. I never knew there were so many. Is there
18 major. I mean, they're
18
just,
major.
yeah.
Is there a reference where I can find a complete list? A Google search turned up nothing with this level.
Tulku dunduk.
Amazon Leon.
La, Amazon no. De la do. Mama ge de dodrup chenge shalop Tulku dundrup do Boston. Kong de depchik sound de pache de dodrup chengoma ge song re de kong jo are de jetons de terge rik Dhamma Mompo Tsama ge de nanga de yena de. There is a book, I think it's called The Treasure Tradition of Tibet or something like that. I think it was published by Wisdom Publications, written by Tulku Dundrup, although I think it's actually mostly a translation of an earlier text by the third Dodrupchen Rinpoche. Anyway, that book, as I remember, goes through many of the different types of terma.
By the third,
I don't know who. I mean, I think the author and the spine and so on is Tulku Dundrup.
okay.
It's called Hidden Teachings of Tibet.
The Hidden Teachings of Tibet. That book, The Hidden Teachings of Tibet. Okay.
Thank you. Also, I'm going to read the whole question here. Like the person before said, there is a phenomena where when my absorption seems to be authentic, there's a feeling that gravity starts to go away, and I find it difficult to remain because I startle when this happens. And is this just a matter of relaxing and not trying to focus?
Nyam chikshwayaris. Nyam de gom jap edose yang. Chidon so tata ngatsa ke lopo la de jiko get soju doa. De ya. Tene de dona lopo ke jiko chempo yemba ke tsoa de mepa drogeres. Then they panic when the gravity goes away, or what do they do? I forget that part.
He doesn't say panic, but he says there is a feeling that gravity starts to go away, and I find it difficult to remain because I startle.
Oh, they're startled. That's it. They're startled. They're like chane. They yeng drogeres. They can't go good.
Tell the kind of song.
Tang ngone de da go man. She doesn't yam de la de.
Nyam nam the shaggy.
Shagere.
Nyam nam the shaggy. Nyam never that the yan in those songs. Che should I yam that on the zanging and nam do the bang, eh? Montoya
That's one of an infinite variety of experiences that can happen in meditation, and it's neither good nor bad. So you simply need to continue without judging it as good or bad, and it will disappear, because that's what experiences do. You need to be free of, let go of the hopes or fears connected with the experience.
I needed a moment to process. On one hand, Rinpoche said, looking at your mind is not archaeology. There's nothing to dig around and find. And then on the other hand, the analogy of differentiating between clouds and the sky is being too narrow. So I guess then it seems like if that's the case, then there really isn't anything to do. And then my worry is, again, if I get too relaxed, my moral discipline is not the best in the world. So I feel like I need to, there's times where I need to put in effort so that I keep my behavior in line, or I keep my mind in line, I guess.
You're talking about during meditation or in post-meditation?
Post-meditation, I guess. But I mean,
no, post-meditation is entirely different. Yeah. Yeah, in post-meditation, no, you have to, anything is possible, so you have to work with situations.
so then there's really just nothing to do. Just sit there. I guess
after meditation, right?
Yeah, no, you're talking about during meditation now.
after, dissolution or whatever, and looking at the mind.
Data korang de gom seva de pacha ke de guru ke ladro ke jeto ne durim gom tsane nyamba shak ju de tsam yen sares. Dela de dona de kapsa zoju dawo de common the ways. Korang de zoju dawo de jea common the ways.
Can't go to common.
That Salchago, Rango Shiju, that Chirin Dong Delne Lama Geshera Sungamendo.
다 가래 고산도 탑긴 나온다. 네, 뭐 그도 고통도.
It's tricky to know exactly what you're describing. You're talking about the period when you have dissolved the visualization
Sure,
and
if I'm
you're
around to
resting,
look at my mind
and then you do it for a little while, and then you realize. So you're talking about a fairly brief period. And that dilla kale che namba ke maombala de treatem jam namato de kale che namba ni treat.
갈래 다 이것도 딱 좋대.
Yeah,
단단 가라 사고 내고면 더.
yeah. This will the real solution to this kind of problem will involve an extensive instruction that will be given at a certain time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, Rinpoche and Yeshe. This morning, in the very beginning, you were talking about in order to have goodness, we must have faith. And my question is, the earth is a big place, and there's lots of people who have faith in lots of different things. Do we need to have faith, particularly in Dharma, to have goodness? Can you comment on that?
Depa maybe menam la karpu yenten zani me somba ke pela tata ngatsu ke pena jikten de la me dhamanda mombo ke chuluk dhamanda mombo la depa yoris da konso ke chuluk rere ke chuluk la depa yopa de konso ke gewa karpu yenten yoya la Dugerepe yana injiminje nangpechola depa yopache gogitore.
Ate kora kapichu jin is something to get about. Something la ta pembatan dewa thinking. Yamana tatok pembatan dewa thinking. Yamana nekap pembatan dewa thinking chuji yina. Injig magic number man, mature singing out today or Matis. That Chapashira Yomari.
As long as the object of one's faith is something positive, it will your openness to that positive thing will allow you to develop positive qualities. Things can be positive in two ways. They can be positive because they are causes of short-term well-being, or they can be positive because they are causes of long-term ultimate well-being. But in either case, they're positive, and therefore they are worthy of faith.
I have a second question if no one else has one. Rinpoche also commented about the importance of keeping, when we're chanting, of keeping the meaning and the words together when we're chanting in order for them to be useful. And I've found I'm not very good at that, especially in Tibetan. And it seems I've gotten worse at it. In the beginning, I seemed to be a little bit better because I chanted in Tibetan all the time. I got better at being able to chant in Tibetan and read the English underneath. But I also I think it disrupted my mind a little bit. And now at home, when I practice by myself, which is most of the time, I've started practicing in English. And I like that a lot. But now when I come here and we chant in Tibetan, I found I've lost that skill to be able to chant in one language and read in another. And I'm very miserable at it now. So I'd like his comments on that.
I mean, I can. Part of this I have to answer because this is something that Rinpoche's never dealt with himself. But you lost the skill because you're out of the habit of doing it. In other words, when I couldn't read Tibetan, when I first started Ngondro, I would, very soon, I memorized the sounds of the Tibetan. So I found as I was chanting, using from the transliteration, I was actually reading the English translation underneath. And that was as effective for me in understanding what I was chanting as it is now being able to read the Tibetan and understand what it says. So it was the same thing. But once you no longer have the Tibetan memorized, because you're chanting in English, you're not going to be able to do that, because you're going to have to read the Tibetan transliteration as you're chanting it. So the reason why it's hard for you to do that now is because you're practicing in English at home. And so therefore the memorized Tibetan doesn't come as easily to you, and so you need to consciously read the Tibetan. And also when you're chanting with other people, you're using a melody, it's usually slower and stuff, so it may not come to your memory as easily as before. So therefore that will prevent you from paying attention to it. But the dambo kong böki de Bardor to ne domba kosa kale de Bardor de lozo ne deni inji ge joya de ta chocho dabo jo data de nang inyi indra de to ne domba donga do indra to ne domba kosa ina la na Bardor to ne domba dona deni de so jetsane deni de gom do de dun samlo toya de dona de choga domba dun samlo toya de duchi la legamare se
다 달랑 가와 만도 되는 거
lasa
간데 선난들 다 니만이 계자리
lasa
대등나 거 라마타 바이나야 다 메세딩 초데 다 chana 게긴 나온데 갑라다 와 티갑라 초기 되니 통도 야보 총이나 다 텔레사서 말이 덱덱이
well in any case it's not really a problem, because as you mentioned you mostly practice by yourself, where you're reciting it in English, so you're able to remain cognizant of the meaning. Here, for just 2 days, you're chanting it in Tibetan, and which, it's not what you're used to anymore, so then it's harder to remember the meaning. But it doesn't matter if you spend 2 days chanting and not remember what it means, as long as most of the time when you're on your own you do.
산적이 제선 요바 찍바레데 빨리게 토라 송행 찍당에 차능엔도 소나 텔레도가 용거리서 칸칸 거게 말했다.
We're all followers of the Buddha, but if of the same Buddha, but if I visited a community that practiced in Pali and had to try and chant with them, I wouldn't understand a word of what they were saying.
Thank you so much for both of you. At one point, I think I heard you say something about, I think it was in regards to having faith or practicing, that if you practice, it needs to be more than just, your faith needs to be more than just feeling better. Has to be, I think I understood you to say that it needed to be more than feeling better, than you just feeling better. And I just wanted to say that if I may not have heard that correctly, but for me, at this stage, maybe if I was 16th or 17th Karmapa or Rinpoche or something, I wouldn't need to. But now, when I read the opening and closing prayers, I feel a lot better. I feel so good.
That wasn't exactly what he said, though.
And then after I feel better, I feel that I can be more compassionate. That's just what I was wanting to say, that maybe at one point, I don't know, do you not need to feel better in order to
Yeah.
to still be able to be compassionate? Can you go, I mean, I know, I've heard stories about 16th Karmapa when he was dying, that he was still a magnificent being, and he was in great pain. But all I can say is that when I'm not feeling well, I think I'm grouchy, and I don't know if I'm very compassionate.
Yeah, but the only thing is, Phyllis, Rinpoche didn't say that.
Okay, so
I remember there was something about feeling better, but it wasn't that simple. It wasn't that feeling better is insufficient or not good or something. It wasn't that. And I'm trying to find it in my notes, and I don't remember where it was. So he didn't. In other words, he didn't say that you shouldn't feel better.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll look and see if I can find the thing.
Tepa the mug sem thing ni je was thinking now what's the matter.
You know, nge tagi.
No.
Tola tana mato rampa yomare. You can go on. We ask more questions. I'll just gradually go through.
Go ahead.
I'm just still trying to comprehend the image when you quote Milarepa about imagining the space without being in a center and being on the edge of it. And, everything I can comprehend is when I'm in a plane, there is always the edge. That's the farthest view. And, I'm like watching the movies when they have the space things. There is still the screen. So it's hard for me to comprehend, imagine without the center, because this is me looking and I'm in a center. And, and then the other thing is like, is the galaxies, those thousands of trillions of galaxies, it's part of the sort of imagination. Can you just make it a little bit closer, that image?
Morangatong. The Juna Morangatong, Hako Tugmare. The Ketada, this. Da the Namka, la Ta Mepa, U Mepa, Donna Namka, la Ta Mepa, Don U Mepa, Kala Segiore. But the Namka Savate, Chiroge Namka de Tatangatsuke, Tonsum de Najing, Tonsum Jawa Taja Momboyore. Tonsum Momboyore.
Chewa Taja Gogam was. Nanasan Zambal and Dekin Namkatelan Tam in the was.
That Morangas and Chitan. Are you saying space has an end?
No. Rinpoche was quoting Milarepa saying,
Yes.
Imagine space with no end and center.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to comprehend to that image.
Well, if there's no end, there can't be a center. You can only say something is the center of an area when that area is defined. That's basic. Was it geometry or something? Yeah. I mean, if you know where something ends, then you can measure its center. But if space is literally endless, you can't say this is the middle of it.
So what I was asking, like, how can I comprehend to this? Because it's, it's me who is looking, so I am sort of in a center from the perspective of the watcher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can I just have that image? It's almost impossible to comprehend that.
Hako togamares. Then a ngatso ge na wasuyenang namka ki chilla nga sabate yores. Ngatso mi soso ge na wala. Namka de ngatso ge takor ne yores.
Tell the Yordis. Then Karamanda, Takonian.
He said, well, we all experience ourselves as being in the center of everything. What's the problem?
Well, there is the image suggesting not to be in the center.
Marong namke chilayana, nga namke chilayo mare. Ngarange nawala, ngarang namke chilayore. Moronge nawala, morong namke chilayore. That's amazing. It's very easy. You experience yourself as at the very center of everything, right?
Yes.
But I can prove that you're not, because I experience myself as the very center of everything. If you were the very center of everything, we would all experience you as the very center of everything. But nobody except you does. I experience myself as the very center of everything. Travis experiences himself as the very center of everything. Each and every person in this room has a different perspective. If there were a true center, we would all experience it in the same way.
Which one is it?
So who is right? Are you the center of the universe? Or am I the center of the universe? Or, maybe, is it Travis? Data dak mepa gonzo de le lasha teres. Fena pe mas e mompo trashing ka magus. Da yana ngatsu sunayang ganzak chik dela da segures. Chu segamarwa. It's the same thing about the proving that the self of persons doesn't exist. If I existed, everyone would call me I. But none of you call me I, you call me you. If I were really I, everyone would agree on it. I agree on it. It sounds like a word game, but actually it's not, because it goes to the heart of perspective.
I'll just be a difficult student today. So that makes sense logically, but experientially it doesn't make any sense.
Sure it does. Sure it does.
Well,
have you never experienced communication with another person who felt that they were the center of the universe? Have you never experienced conflicts because two people both believe they're the center of the universe?
Sure.
Has nobody ever called you you when you're sure you're I?
But in agreeing with all of that, I still feel like I'm the center of the universe.
That's because of habit.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it's true. It's like enlightened beings can use the word I, but they don't habitually attach to it. Like His Holiness, Karmapa can say I, but he doesn't believe it. Ngomake gosons, Jawon Chudropa Rikpe Dorje la Michike Drisons, Sanje la da yopes, Sanje la da yote, Senjin Tamjeres. Like, I've heard that the 16th Karmapa was once asked in the West, did the Buddha have a self or an ego? He said, yes, it's all sentient beings. So to a Buddha, all sentient beings are I.
So I guess then is how does one get to that experience? I guess the answer is lots and lots of meditation.
I would assume. Otherwise we're barking up the wrong tree, aren't we? Maybe mahjong. I don't know.
Not the key. Mahjong.
Oh boy.
Yes.
It's common to show our concern for others by hoping. I hope to see you again. I hope you have a good day. I hope you get better. But
You mean by saying that, by
Yes.
expressing, yeah.
Yes. So how do we show our concerns by not using hope? We're told not to have hopes or fears. And people are used to, people love hope.
Yeah, my shepare. De ngatso ge redo dan de hope de kagarawa. No, the two things are utterly unconnected. First of all, there's a huge difference between meditation and post-meditation, and also, so one should not have hope and fear is in meditation. Hope for more clarity, hope that you can, because that's all prejudice toward the contents of mind, which is a distraction. So it might be better to translate hope and fear as preference, to be without preference or prejudice. The way we use hope in English, in general, to refer to an aspiration for things to get better, that's a good thing. We don't want to be without that. And there's no reason why we should stop saying, I hope you feel better. Or, you know,
It's not just like an expectation that can lead to disappointment or discontentment.
No, because you're supposed to, in post-meditation, you're supposed to function in a way that accords with reasonable mundane custom, behavior, and, you know, not be weird, unless there's a really good reason. But otherwise, you act like a normal person so that you fit in. You're not supposed to be a weirdo because you meditate.
Been barking up the wrong tree.
Kunzang Kunzang Tonlam Gang Cheche. Dona de Lam de Ngoma Romashe Chik Song Song de Tepe Tak Shishin Doba Shishin Doba Sen Kun Sudan Sudron Nayang Tomba de Le Labo Dik Labo Dawa. No, like when they explained that this, as Rinpoche did, I think a couple of weekends ago here, when it said the sign of having heard the Dharma is to be tranquil and subdued, and the sign of having meditated is to have no kleshas, that tranquil and subdued doesn't mean that you're like a downer. It means that you fit in. No matter who you're with, they can get along with you. You're easy to deal with. You're cooperative and you're appropriate, and you don't always try to stick out and be a weirdo.
Yeah.
I have a little bit different question. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I notice that the little bowls on the altar still have a water, just because I was too tired to take the water out. And in that instance, do I keep the water or I take the water out and then put the fresh water?
If you leave it overnight, the rule is you have to drink it all yourself. No, you just throw it out and refill them.
I'm just going to keep asking follow-ups. I'm pretty lazy, and it seems oftentimes I leave the water overnight. And I've heard it's a bad thing and that one shouldn't do it. I know I'm going to get...
I never heard that.
Okay.
Said, boy, you're going to be drinking a lot of water, boy. Where'd you hear that it's a bad thing?
You know,
Just the Buddhist grapevine.
I don't want to point fingers.
It says your belly's going to be sloshing with water before you even get to the breakfast table.
Yeah.
Water's good for you, you know.
Okay, I heard like maybe old wives' tales, like the hungry ghosts come and drink it, but that's
No,
like
the hungry ghost the hungry ghost belief is that if you put some people believe that if you put the water bowls upright and empty, that hungry ghosts will infest them, and then they'll drown in the water. Some people and some lamas do say that, but I once asked Lama Tratop about it, and he said, I don't think so. Rinpoche says he's heard it, but he doesn't believe it. He thinks just people just say shit, you know. I mean, they just, you know. I mean, they do. It's just something they say. I mean, you know. I mean, look at the stuff we say. I mean, it's like. No, seriously, think about it. If we were living without all of this technology and that made us crazy all the time, we'd be making up all kinds of stuff. We do it anyway. Me chupa de soso ke nutse ke tsangma yapo tade yapo chek zoju re ma tok ngone ke nam tok de so goyamandawa. No, with offerings are an opportunity to accumulate merit. And it's very, very powerful to especially offer water because it's the basis of all life. But don't let superstitions pollute the simple, genuine act of offering.
Okay, then I have a follow-up question on that, which I'm sure we can spice it up if we like. So along that lines of superstitions about our shrines.
Oh, boy.
I'll try to put this as tactfully as possible.
Don't.
Okay.
Yeah, because we won't.
So my shrine is in my bedroom.
Oh, you're worried about that thing?
Yeah, that thing.
The thing.
That
yeah,
thing.
The thing.
So I've been told that it's very bad to have some activities happen in the presence of my shrine. And I've decided that that was a superstition and bunk. But I'd like to take that on some higher authority than my...
제가 가면도
제가 가면 나와. 근데 총그럼 시켜 송송데 라캉라 세기요래 때는 조카로 들어내지. Yeah, this is someone once asked Trungurumshe this question, and he said, you know, the prohibition against sex in temples means that you don't go to a shrine room to have sex. You know, like you don't go on pilgrimage to the Jokong in Lhasa and then have sex there. You know, but if you have a you know, a shrine in your room, that's where it is.
산재 거였나 응어도야 봐 쇼부디가
다 로주 못 보셔도. Yeah, says, you know, maybe you need to blindfold all the, you know, the Buddhas and stuff.
So my Dharma friend, who was very concerned about this fact, actually told me that I needed to buy a trifold blind to put across my shrine.
Yeah.
To act as a blindfold for my
my
sacred rupas that should not witness such.
That's.
I did not go buy one.
Yeah.
You know,
They get very curious.
If I was a rupa sitting there all day long,
then pretty soon
I'd want a little spice.
So I guess it's a way of getting statues to move and perform miracles. Oh.
Okay, who wants to follow up that one?
So this next question will be the last one. Yours will be the last one. Not because of the content, no, you're it. You are the center of the universe here. Live it up.
So I'm just going to keep going with superstitions. So the other thing I heard is it's inappropriate to bring Dharma texts into the bathroom. Now, in the past, before I heard that, I probably did most of my reading either in the tub or on the other thing. And then after hearing that, I stopped because I'm not supposed to have Dharma texts in the bathroom, which is, I feel bad in that I read a whole lot of Dharma that way. And if it's in so It seems, I see why it's inappropriate, but on the other hand, it was a good reading opportunity.
네, 소소게 두시 강연 봐. 저한테 소소게 두시 그 페나망구파게 두시잖아, 여보마. 데 소소게 semge.
다 랍드 데브 때난도 더버 반 인지 전에 쳐지도 통하는데 송하러
로.
then 산초도 저랑 랍드 데브 때는도 난데 와래.
It said that when you listen to Dharma, the instructions like Gampopa gives them in the jewel ornament, sit on a very low and modest seat and comfortable seat, and then imbibe the nectar of the teachings from the mouth of the teacher. So if your toilet is a modest, low, and comfortable seat, then fine. So we'll stop over there.
Dana Bamzene Tigai Namji Balai Rubai Siberan Solen Roa Roa Yoi Gewai Deye Jewo Suna Yeshe Sozoit Suna Yeshe Lezonwe Damba Kenyi Obar Yoi Sanchoy Semne Rinpoche Maje Banai Jigere Chembai Nyambai Mebada Konye Konda Bavar Yoi Semje Damje Dedan Dingere Je Indoi Tamje Tade Tongbar Sho Sanje Zambai Kanda Sayoba Teda Kunje Mulan Rabai Yoi Sanje Reja Nzozi Tambeka Jaraga Deya Dandar Nimbai Sanje Mezon Reve Samhaj Sije Soda Jabira Yigu.
Thank you. Thank you.